about him, he graduated from Brigham Young University with a BS degree in 1979. He's currently a chartered property casualty underwriter and senior vice president of Insurance Specialists Incorporated, which is located in Denver, Colorado. He's put his address up here on the board if you'd like that, and would like at any time to correspond with him. He suggests in his work that the U.S. is losing its position in technological development and implementation, and international markets are looking to the U.S. business environment for assistance in customer service and marketing. Service, marketing, promotions, and the international are buzzwords for the 1990s. Insurance Specialist has successfully placed over $300 million in specialty risk premium for clients worldwide, helping to market and promote United States-oriented products and services. Perhaps you're aware of this radio broadcast or advertisement where the individual is interviewing the person who breaks everything he ever got, and it has him breaking things over the radio and listening, and you can hear everything crashing around him, and it says you're the ideal individual for an account with such and such bank, providing a checking account there, and everything that you write a check for, if it gets broken, will be replaced. Well, that program is the program that Jeffrey Wells has instituted, and it's now being placed at banks and credit card companies throughout the world. As a matter of fact, American Express spent $58 million advertising these programs, leading to phenomenal increases in retail charges worldwide. The same programs have expanded to other financial institutions, including Visa, International, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase Manhattan Bank, Citibank, American Underwriters Incorporated. Other clients include General Electric, ITT, Borg Warner, Toshiba, Pacific Telephone, Century 21. The major emphasis of Mr. Wells' lecture will center on how promotional ideas are born, sold to the client, and underwritten, and placed with various insurance markets for international implementation. Jeff and Holly Wells are the parents of 3 daughters, and they enjoy, as a hobby, raising paint horses. Jeff recently served in the Denver Spanish branch presidency and currently teaches the high priest group in his ward. He'll develop the topic today, learning to swim with the sharks, Mr. Jeffrey Wells.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. If I don't hang myself before we get done, I'm going to accomplish some things. I know you're all here to hear a joke first, so if you don't mind the diversion, let me tell a joke. A couple months ago, I was in London and returning from Lloyd's of London, and I was with a broker that works there, and we were in the Tube, and the Tube is like a New York subway, and he leaned over and started telling me this joke. The funny part about him telling the joke at that point was everybody else in the subway train heard it too. When he was done, fortunately all of them laughed, so that'll put the pressure on you to laugh when I'm finished. If the joke doesn't go over, it'll be his fault, not mine, because it was his joke to me. But there were these 2 bats in this dark, damp cave, and one bat looked over the other and says, you know, I still have a bit of hunger, and I think I'll go out and get a bite to eat. And his friend bat next to him said, well, you can't do that. If you fly out of this cave, the sun's coming up in 10 minutes, and you'll shrivel up and die. He says, oh, don't worry. So he let go, turned upside down, and flapped out of the cave. Just a few minutes later, he comes back, and he has blood all over his face and around his mouth, and he flies back into the cave, turns upside down, and grabs onto the ceiling. And his friend is just astonished and says, that is amazing. How did you go out and get food so quickly? And the bat that just returned said, well, look outside the cave there. Do you see that tree? And the other bat says, no. He said, well, neither did I. I told my older daughter I was going to tell that joke, and she said, Dad, don't tell that bad joke. And I said, no, you mean bat joke. She said, no, I mean bad joke. So, as was mentioned, the title of the lecture today is How to Swim with the Sharks. All of you know there's a popular book on the shelves today that talks about how to swim with the sharks, and there's a lot of ideas and input relative to how you might succeed in the sales field. I've sort of plagiarized that title to talk to you today about some things that I've learned in the industry that I'm involved in that might pertain to all business situations once you leave your educational process and go out into the business world, or whatever environment that you want to end up in. There's nothing more scary, I think, if you've been in this circumstance, to be in shark-infested waters, to see those primordial serrated toothed creatures swimming around you, and it's not a real advantageous position to be in if you're in the water with them and you're not familiar with the environment. Especially if you're flapping around, you look like a dead or dying fish, and they'll come and devour you. I know when I graduated to my first job, I felt like I was dropped in the Pacific Ocean. I didn't think my little splash would be noticed. But it's amazing. The more work that you do in the business environment, the more opportunities you have. That ocean seems to decrease, and it's not quite as threatening. But hopefully today I'll give you some techniques that you might use as you're paddling in the water, and some things that will not only allow you to swim with the sharks, but maybe knock a few out. Let me tell you a little bit about myself and my company. We, for years, were primarily involved in the extended warranty business. We would provide extended warranty coverage on all sorts of products, from automobiles, what we call brown and white goods, electronics, washing machines, dryers. Those are considered the white goods. We were insuring the service contracts that dealers would sell on top of the product itself. So you go in and buy a washing machine, and they try and sell you another 1 or 2 or 3 years worth of coverage for an additional amount of money. And we did that for a number of years. Then 2 or 3 of our clients came to us that we were working with. One was General Electric, another one was ITD Commercial Finance. And these 2 companies provide inventory financing for retailers around the world. And inventory financing is the bank loan that retailers get to have product on their shelf. Generally, the product that sits there, they don't own. It's owned by some bank somewhere else. They just have it lent to them for a period of time until they get it off the shelf. But that's why dealers, retailers, need to turn products. So they, I'm sure this is elementary for a lot of you, they need to turn product because of the high inventory costs. Most dealers very rarely own their inventory nowadays. So these 2 companies, General Electric and ITT, came to us and wanted us to take our extended warranty program and private label it under their own name. So we began doing that, but in that relationship we found out that they had either ownership interest in or a business relationship with hundreds and hundreds of manufacturers, making everything from widgets and ball bearings to the space shuttle. And we wanted, or began to see, that there was a tremendous opportunity to tap that market. Especially after we began to talk to some of them, we found out that many of them, in today's environment, were having a hard time pushing their product, getting it off the shelf. And without getting it off the shelf, then their doors would not stay open very much longer. And so we began looking at it. In retrospect, as we look back at the 80s, we can see a lot of things that have occurred in the last 10, 15 years, and you've been able to observe that have put the position of anything produced in the United States in an inferior position. U.S.-built products are not looked upon favorably. The quality of those products are demeaned in most publications, and I'll say it's unrightfully so. We keep statistics on all products that are built and manufactured for purposes of our product lines, and the U.S.-built products are good products. What comes into play, more important than the product itself, is the perception of quality or the perception of value. Now, I'd like to emphasize with you something that I've learned that I think is very important. Maybe someday you can quote me, but not today. This will be an idea maybe you can say you presented. But I've heard for years and years that service is the buzzword of the 90s. But I disagree entirely. I think that's really a cop-out for the poor workmanship in the materials or services that we're providing now, thinking that we can get away from manufacturing and get into service-related or oriented industries. Again, that's escaping the problem. I think that manufacturing has a big future, a long-term future in the United States, and that quality in America can be and should be improved. And that is sort of the role that our company plays, is trying to change the perception of value so that you buy the good quality products, and that with the increase in sales, more money can be invested in that product, obviously justifying, putting better parts, making sure you hire better people to put it together, and all that. So basically, that's what's happened in the 80s. People tend to look at the quality of U.S. products as going downhill, and then they turn around and say, well, let's get into a new arena, which would be the service industry. Now, service is very important, but what I think is necessary in this decade, and more importantly, throughout the turn of the century, not only nationally but internationally, is quality. Quality of product and quality of services. I think the buzzword should be quality. And again, you can quote me on that if you'd like. And that's what we'll be talking about today, is how to give the perception of value so that you understand that there is quality in products, and particularly those products that I'll talk to you about today. Let me give you a couple of examples of how that perception has affected the marketplace. Let me digress for just one moment. I addressed a youth conference a few years ago, and I had to capture the youth's attention, so I talked about a topic which they tended to joke about quite often, and that was their parents. And I gave them 10 ways that they could determine that they were growing older. And I won't bore you with those 10 reasons, but one of those reasons was, you know you're growing old when your children ask for your personal perspective on historical events. And I'd like to talk to you about the Chrysler Corporation, what happened then in the late 70s, early 80s. If you don't know about it, you've probably read about it in a textbook. I personally experienced the situation. I was buying a new car at that time, and I remember asking a lot of people what they felt about a Chrysler-built product, and invariably everyone said that Chrysler was one of the poorest built vehicles in America, that they would begin falling apart, and you shouldn't buy a Chrysler vehicle. They began talking about buying Japanese or buy European because their quality of workmanship is better. Now, that was absolutely true then. In fact, European-built, Japanese-built vehicles are a little better, but insignificantly so. The loss failures on those vehicles, even through your own experience, if you've had both kinds of cars running at the same time, you'll find that they are built better, but not much better. But what happens is that because the sales of domestically manufactured vehicles are going down, they have a hard time retooling their industries and putting money into quality assurance, quality manufacturing processes, so that they have a better built product. So it becomes a chicken and egg type scenario. What comes first? So these major corporations have come to us wanting us to improve their product and help change that perception of value. Now, Lee Iacocca, the chairman of the board of Chrysler Corporation in 79 and 80, saw that Chrysler was about ready to go out of business. And as a result of that, they needed to maintain cash flow. So he went to the government and said, I'd like a government-backed loan. I'd like the government to back private loans that I think I can acquire. He did that through a lot of politicking and whatnot. Unusually so, the government held a corporation together under the premise that obviously more employment would result and would help the economy, and the economy at that point wasn't looking very well. Inflation rates were extremely high, and it was impossible to start projects because of high interest rates, high inflation. So with those loans, he could keep the business going, but if the public's perception of the product itself was still poor, he wasn't going to sell anything, and as a result, he couldn't pay back the loans. So he was in a position where he had to change the attitude of the public towards his product. So he got on TV, and this is when he first became famous. Now he's almost a household name, and a lot of people wanted him to run for president. But he got on TV, he kicked the tires of a Chrysler-built vehicle and said, we stand behind quality, We stand behind our product. And he offered something which was very, very unusual at that time. It was 5 years and 50,000 miles of extended warranty coverage. It was free. It came with the vehicle. You didn't have to buy it. He would cover the engine, the drive axle, and the transmission in the event the vehicle were to fail any time prior to 5 years or 50,000 miles, whichever came first. So as a result of that, the fact that the product was back in the industry, he went out and saw that the Chrysler sales began to increase. And when Chrysler sales increased, he had the ability to build a little better product, and along with the better product, more sales. And then he paid off those loans, which were necessary to keep Chrysler going in record fashion. So as a result of that, he stayed on TV. He was proud of the Chrysler-built product, and he changed the perception of value of Chrysler. Now, Chrysler does build a better product today. Ford is still better, but Chrysler is very, very close. I won't say anything about GM. So now he's faced with the same dilemma he had earlier. Chrysler had to change the perception of value, but now people are still beginning to buy Japanese or European-built vehicles because that perception is that they do build a better car. And so he's out promoting things which he would never have considered before, airbags and a few other things, that will help increase the worth of the car so that you'll go out and buy a Chrysler vehicle and not a Japanese vehicle. 15 years ago, it would have been very unusual that you'd see Japanese-built products in your home. Very unusual that you or your parents or relatives or whoever would be driving foreign-built products. But that's changed dramatically, again, over the last 10 years or so. So there was a perception of value, perception of quality there that needed to be changed. Another story, and I'll go through this real quick. Curtis Mathis, many of you know, is a TV manufacturer. In the early 70s, they were about ready to go out of business, and they built a very low-end television set. They couldn't keep up with the competition. They were about ready to close their doors. And in a final effort to stay open, they decided to give away a 5-year unconditional guarantee in their TV. And as a result of that, sales increased dramatically. Now, they didn't think they'd have to worry about the guarantee because they were going to go out of business anyway. They just wanted to sell the product that they had, but the result was so positive. They sold more than they had, and they began to increase pricing such that they commanded 2 times more for their TV than they did before they had the warranty. And they didn't change the product at all. They just gave a guarantee behind the product, and as a result of that, sales went up. So again, the change in perception of quality. Now the additional repairs that ensued now in the following 5 years on that TV might have been $40 or $50 or $60, but they could command another $200 to $300 because of, again, the perception. So back to General Electric and ITT. These companies, very predominant in the inventory finance industry, had many manufacturers that wanted to increase their sales. So they said, we have a dilemma. We can't get it off the shelf for one reason or another. One company, Snapper, had snow blowers, an overproduction of snow blowers, and they could not figure out how to get rid of the inventory. They had to hang on to it for one more year. The inventory finance costs that we were talking about earlier might have put Snapper lawnmower out of business. They had all these snow blowers on their hands. So as a result of that, we proposed that they do a promotion that in the 5 major cities, Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and 2 others, that if you purchased a Snapper snowblower and the annual precipitation in those 5 cities over that next winter was less than was normal, that you get a full refund or your full money back, and you could keep the snowblower. That was quite a promotion. I hear gasps of news already. Just wait, I've got a few more products for you. So we took our chances, went to insurance companies, and asked them to take that risk so that in the event we had less snow than we were supposed to have, that if Snapper had to buy back or pay out that much money for those snow blowers, that rather than Snapper having to pay it, the insurance companies would step up and pay. Now the promotion of soliciting or promoting that concept was much less expensive than sitting on that inventory for another year. So we saved the money that way, and surprisingly enough, they dumped or got rid of all their inventory because of the promotion. Now, I was lucky that the precipitation was less than normal in only one city, Chicago. I never have liked Chicago anyway. But the other cities hung in there for me, and Even Chicago itself, even though they had less annual precipitation than what they would normally have, because the result of the precipitation was after the season, most people forgot about the promotion, and even if they had cards, they forgot to turn them in. So it didn't end up costing much at all. But we did move product and did get it off the shelves. I'd like to talk to you about two products in more detail, though, two that you might be more familiar with, because there's been hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising to promote those concepts. In 1985, I was walking, an old lonely soul walking down Lower Manhattan in New York, and we talked about sharks. There are sharks on the streets and sharks in buildings and everywhere you go. It's an interesting place, but the sharks will devour you if you're not prepared. People can be hard and cruel. But I remember I thought as I walked past the American Express Tower that it wouldn't hurt me if I walked in there and made a little proposal to somebody about our product to see if they would consider soliciting our product line through their billing inserts. If you have an Express card or a Visa card or something, you get it in the mail, you have all these little stuffings, buy our clock or a TV or something. I was going to suggest to them that why don't they sell our warranty coverage along with that product. So I knocked on the door and went up the big elevator and everything else and made the presentation, knowing that if I goofed, I could disappear, dye my hair, put on a new suit, and show up the next day and they wouldn't remember me. But I made the presentation. I failed miserably. Another competitor had beat me to the punch, and I lost the opportunity. But he said, someone across the hall is working on another project that's similar to this. Why don't you go over and see her? So I walked across the hall and found out that they were trying to put together a concept that would increase sales on the retail side, meaning that the American Express card is typically used for travel and entertainment, restaurants, hotels, vacation packages, or whatever. But they wanted to enter the domain of Visa and MasterCard, which was in the retail centers where you buy appliances and electronics. So they wanted to develop a promotion or a concept that would increase retail purchases on the American Express card. So after working with them, explaining to them our background, we were hired as consultants and began to work with them on what we know today as the Buyer's Assurance Program, meaning that anything you buy with the American Express card that has a manufacturer's warranty, we double that manufacturer's warranty up to 1 year. So if you buy a pair of speakers that have a 5-year warranty, we'll put 1 additional year on top of those speakers, so that if they were to fail in the 6th year, don't worry, you bought it with the American Express card. Don't worry, be happy, that you can turn it into us and we will repair it or replace it in that 6-year period. Or if the product had a 1-year warranty, we put 1 year on top of that. If the product had a 6-month warranty, we put 6 months on top of that. So we double it up to 1 year. So we worked with them on it to help them develop the rate for it. The program was launched. Now I have an example of that program. You've seen this commercial probably many times in English. This is an example of the program that we launched for them in Mexico. So it's in Spanish. Those that speak Spanish will enjoy it. Watch the pictures, think you're 4 years old and can't read. But you'll see that it depicts product failing and whatnot, and that's pretty much what the concept is. But it was a phenomenal success. Retail sales increased, and American Express got major recognition for this concept, and it virtually changed the credit card industry.
A veces sucede esto, un día después de que la garantía se ha vencido. Pero su tranquilidad se prolongará mucho más al efectuar sus compras con la tarjeta American Express. Porque gracias al nuevo beneficio Garantía Plus, American Express le otorga la garantía un máximo de 1 año si usted registra su compra. Garantía Plus es un beneficio más de la membresía y una razón más para solicitar la tarjeta hoy mismo. ¿Por qué esperar?
How many remember that commercial in English? Remember seeing that one? Over the course of 2 years, they spent close to probably $80 million just advertising that concept alone. Again, it was a good success and created quite a stir in the credit card industry. Now, the same people I were dealing with came back to me about 6 months later and said, Jeff, we have a problem. The program's been a success, but we are interested in seeing if we can increase sales for products that don't have a manufacturer's warranty. For example, clothing. Can you come up with something? So we disappeared for a few weeks and came back and proposed to them that we could place, from an underwriting standpoint, a property program on all product purchased with the American Express card. That means clothing, that means everything but services. So that meant that if you bought a shirt, a nice shirt someplace, and the shirt were stolen, and you reported it to us, we would give you your money back. That meant that if you were wearing the shirt and you put it on and you walked out the door and you caught something and you ripped it, we would replace it. If it was damaged in a fire or flood, if you ran over in your car, or if your kids destroyed it, anything, we would replace it. So it became what we call an all-risk program. So American Express liked the idea. They took it to focus groups. How many of you know what a focus group is? Okay. For those of you that don't, a focus group is a panel of consumers that hear an idea, and by their reaction, you can somewhat determine the reaction of the general public once the program is launched. The focus group felt that the Purchase Protection Plan would be the most exciting product ever launched in the industry. So as a result of that, we began working with American Express, designing the concept. But the big problem was ensuring the concept. You can see that if they have over $200 billion a year in retail purchases, that if everybody decided to claim that, that's a big, big premium payment. And so I went to the only market that I knew of that would consider doing something like that. Do you have any idea who that might be? Who are the unusual risk takers? Good, we're going to learn something today. Lloyd's of London, have you heard that term before? Okay, most people think that Lloyd's of London, I'm glad no one knows this because this is really exciting. Good to know. Lloyd's of London is not a company, it's a location. It's a location where a lot of people get together that are called underwriters that represent a group of investors or syndicate members. Now, an individual might be sitting in a chair and he represents 100 people. And he'll listen to a risk and decide to take a part or a piece of that risk. Now, let me explain to you the tradition. Lloyd's was, in concept, was started over 300 years ago in a Lloyd's coffee shop. A bunch of sailing merchants would get together over coffee, and one of them would be sailing, and he'd say, "Oh, shucks, I hope my ship doesn't go down because it would put me out of business." And through some form or fashion, the others came up with the idea, well, we will guarantee the shipment of your ship. If it doesn't, we'll pay your bills. So the other 4 merchants sitting there would pay, individually 25% of whatever risk, because the guy that was sailing would probably go down with the ship. So they'd split that 4 ways. But it helped spread the risk. Then the next guy would go with the next trip, and the other 4 would end up taking that risk. So what happened was, as that began to grow and develop in this little coffee shop, it became overrun with people wanting to share this risk. And that's what Lloyd's of London is today, is you have individuals literally sitting in wooden boxes that have others come up to them and say, here's the risk, would you like to take a piece of it? Now with the American Express concept, had we done that as a homeowner's floater, we would have gone out and probably needed to have charged $200 million in premium. Now, American Express could not afford that. For this particular program, initially they had $5 million. So we explained to underwriters that we would build in some checks and balances in the system. For example, because it's free and you're not paying for it, you're going to forget you have it. The second thing is, by launching it, it's going to take you a while to see 5 of those commercials to understand what you're really being offered. And then in the event you have a claim, you've got to remember at that point that you had coverage, and then you have to go through that grueling process of calling us and waiting for a loss report and then filling out that loss report. And because we were secondary, meaning you had to submit it to homeowners first if you had homeowners, there wouldn't be very many people that would go through that process. So we got the premium down from $200 million down to $5 million. American Express said, yes, we can afford that. So what we would do is we'd go around to underwriters at Lloyd's of London. We would literally walk up to a box, they'd be sitting there in the corner, and we would queue up. You know what queuing up means? Certain mission in England means standing in line, queuing up. So we would queue up, I'd stand there, and I'd literally have 2 minutes to speak to one underwriter. So I'd give my pitch, I'd ramble through it real quick, and they would generally make a decision on that risk, not by the risk itself, but by their how they felt about you. If they felt that you were coming across confident in the rate, if you believed in it, if they felt you had integrity, because you could literally take advantage of these people. Lloyd's prides itself in insuring the uninsurable. That's why it has the reputation that it has. That's why it's important for you to know, because eventually in your business dealings you might need to use Lloyd's. It's a very well-respected institution, and you can get a lot of things done there if you have some creative ideas that need to have insurance backing. So that's something you should probably write down and remember, and probably understand Lloyd's a little better. But you would go to these underwriters, they'd sit on a corner of a box, we'd make the pitch, they'd say yay or nay. If they said yay, they'd take a little piece of paper and a pen, they'd scratch their initials. If it were me, it'd be JLW, 1%. So that means that if it was a $5 million risk, he would take 1% of it. So he'd get 1% of the premium, and he would take 1% of the losses if there was a claim. So what did that mean? And then I had to go to another person, and I'd say, please put down 20%. He'd put down 1%. So I had to go to another person. He'd put down 1%. Well, 70 people later, I had filled out 100% of the risk. But that's how insurance is placed at Lloyd's of London. Okay, so it's a very interesting marketplace, and one that I could talk about for hours and hours. I've done a lot of programs at Lloyd's. Now, an average individual can't go into Lloyd's. You need to be tribunalized. Sounds almost like an incoordination, like we were saying earlier, but I am tribunalized. So if anybody wants an autograph afterward, come on up. But there are very few people that are tribunalized with what we call line slip authority, meaning I can say on behalf of Lloyd's, I'll bind that risk. So you just need to find those individuals if you have a concept, and they'll do that on behalf of Lloyd's and go to Lloyd's and make the presentation. So we placed the American Express Purchase Protection Plan. And retail sales increased dramatically. That meant that their transaction fee went up, and it more than offset the cost of the program. And it gave them a gimmick over and above Visa and MasterCard. Now Visa, American Express's competitor, also came to us, and we're also doing their programs. So if you have a Visa card with the program or an American Express card, those programs are ours. Continue buying things because it makes us more money. Let me show you an example of the most recent Purchase Protection Plan commercial, which has been running. You'll see it a lot more this next Christmas. So when I get the lights.
Right. Now it eats these things, all right? It opens its mouth, and it goes. Push this button.
Peter, no TV till you've had your breakfast.
Now it eats these things, all right? Peter!
He did what?
Well, I did say something about feeding the machine.
Well, don't worry, Mr. Bowen, you're covered. It's automatic when you use the American Express card.
Thank you. You know I told you this machine had a mouth? Forget I ever said that.
Lost, stolen, or damaged. A way to protect the things you buy.
Now, as I mentioned, we're doing this for American Express. We're doing it for Visa. This last February, we launched it on checking accounts in major financial institutions across the country. Bank of America is the foremost provider of the program right now. But you can see that its purpose was to increase retail purchases, and it did just that. Plus, it gave them what I call an advertising gimmick, something to set American Express apart from Visa. And that's why Visa has to run and copy it, because they don't want to be left in the dust. So if we're the only providers, then we make more money, and we're very happy. So we go on to bigger and better things. Now, some new things up and coming, if you want to watch for these. the American Express Optima card, we have a new promotion with them where if you purchase something with the Optima card, which is the equivalent to their Visa, which is equivalent to Visa or MasterCard, that for any reason, anything you buy can be returned within 60 days if the retailing center or the merchant doesn't take it back. So, in essence, anything you buy can be returned for any reason. Very aggressive promotion when you think about all the potential risk and the total exposure in the program. Another program coming up is the American Express Traveler's Check Program, wherein if you buy a certain amount of traveler's checks, say $500 worth, and you go on a trip, and you lose your personal effects on the trip, not that which you purchased with the traveler's check, but just anything you bring with you, and you prove that you were on your trip and you used American Express traveler's checks during the trip, will reimburse you for any personal effects losses that occur on your trip, or in your car as it's parked, or at home while you're away. The name of the program is While You're Away Plan, and that was launched this last Monday. It will be in this area coming to you soon. The Optima Card program will be launched sometime this next February. Now, we do things outside the financial institution marketplace. I was talking earlier to some of the faculty about a promotion we have with HBO. HBO is interested in keeping their subscribers online. So they've come to us and asked if we would be interested in helping them maintain greater acquisition of subscribers and retention of subscribers. So we've put together a program with them that if you, as long as you subscribe to HBO and your TV fails, we'll fix it. Now, will that keep you on HBO? Good promotion. The other one I have is with Tide, of Procter & Gamble. They sell over 200,000 Tide boxes a year, 200 million Tide boxes a year. They want to sell more. Can you believe that? And so what we've done is if you show us that you're using Tide by sending in the back of the coupon, as long as you send in those coupons that are on the back of the Tide box, will cover any mechanical failure of your washing machine. So if you're willing to send those in once a month, we'll continue covering that. I mentioned to you the Snapper program earlier, but you can sort of get an idea of what we do. We're helping these people get product off the shelf. We're helping them increase the value or the perception of that product. We do it in an insurance way because there's generally risk associated with that. Now, in terms of international applications, let me quickly mention a few things to you. All these companies that we deal with on a domestic basis have the international side of the house. And generally, they don't communicate very well. They don't share information about products because there's an ego situation between domestic and international centers within companies. So you need to go back over and sell the concept to the international area if you want to go international. By going international, you have problems of regulation, you have problems of different profiles of people, different risk assumptions in the other countries, which need to be taken into consideration. Now, many of you have probably studied about the single market in Europe. It's being put together by the European Economic Community. The purpose of the single market in Europe is to standardize methods of doing business, everything from the flow of electrical current to regulations, how forms are filed. The currency itself is something that they're trying to merge together so that it can become one market, the largest single market in the world. I think that's big talk. I don't think it's going to be effective in 1991, but it will be a major competitor to the U.S. eventually. However, the opportunity for U.S. multinational companies to take advantage of those changing places in the international marketplace and move in and impose U.S. capabilities on a centralized basis in regions. Our company is doing that. We're setting up administrative facilities in Singapore to handle Australasia, administrative facilities in Chile, which is the best governmental environment in South America, to handle all of South America. And somewhere in Europe, we either be Dublin or somewhere outside London, we'll set up a centralized third-party administration facility to handle these kinds of programs for all of Europe, including the East Bloc countries. So our company itself has some tremendous opportunities in front of it, and we're excited because we're helping America, we're helping get products off the shelf, and we're doing it in a unique and creative and an all-American way. And we're involved from everything from coming up with the idea, proposing the idea, developing it to get it to the market, helping doing the advertising so that it looks interesting. How many of you remember the commercial where the lady's walking with a black hat and the wind blows and it blows blows off her head into the Hudson Bay. I was there for that filming in New York. It took all day long to do that 10-second segment. A couple hats did go in the water. Most of the time it would blow off the dock onto the ground and they'd bring it back up. But it's interesting to be part of that overall picture. Then to see your program, your idea that you thought of in a shower one morning, up on TV, and you have a chance to address people about the concept. Very exciting for me, and I'm real pleased to be involved in that kind of environment. I appreciate the education I received at BYU, that the diverse education allowed me to have experience in so many different areas that creatively we could think about some of these concepts and ideas. But just the closing comment I'd like to make is the spiritual and the moral ethics that I learned here at BYU far surpassed any educational information that I might have acquired. The talks I had with my advisors and professors that are now close friends of mine were more important to me than what I learned in the lecture or the class itself, because they did a good job of impressing upon me the ethical approach of business, and I hope all of you do too. I don't think I could have gone to Lloyd's, and I don't think that I could have sold that big of a risk that has catapulted our company into so many opportunities had I not tried to exercise the integrity that this institution helps us acquire. And I hope all of you keep that in mind as you go out into the world, and that'll help you survive the shark-infested waters. So that's all I have. Any questions? Yes?
Now, are there anything that is not covered by this program, like obvious fields, without checking out the big American stuff?
Are you thinking about cementing a claim or something?
No, I just wanted to start out with big American stuff.
Did you? We knew you were going to ask that question, and we have excluded motorized vehicles and parts thereof, so sorry. Yes?
Just wondering what your personal feelings are. Does it car, I think it's called a facade or something, it has a money back guarantee. Do you think that'll go more standard or even effective?
Well, no, that's a short-term promotion just because of that particular vehicle. They don't have a lot of money behind it. But those kinds of promotions are very common, especially on a short-term basis. At the end of the year, they give a lot of, rebates are pretty standard, but that's a promotion. Chrysler had the same thing. Whirlpool gave an unconditional guarantee that if you wanted to return any Whirlpool appliance 1 year after you purchased it, that they would take it. And unfortunately, the product was bad enough, they had a big run on it, and they couldn't afford it. I think it's, I can't remember which line it is now because we're not involved with it, but one of the refrigerator manufacturers, I think it might be Maytag, is guaranteeing their product to the year 2000. I've seen some commercials on TV about that. So, good question. Yes.
I know as far as back to the Chrysler, you said that they probably didn't change their product a whole lot at first until they could afford to upgrade and things like that. And at the same time, Toyota, I tried to go through a Toyota dealership to have a tune-up or something like that as a real pain. But yet you very rarely have to do that. Why did it take Chrysler so long to figure that out? And what happened to make that fail in the first place?
Well, it's funny, but in the business environment, it's all a matter of dollars, and it costs money to build a quality product. I'm sure you've seen or experienced or read about just the assembly lines in America are antiquated, and we're not able to build them as quickly, and we can't jump in and look at all the welding points and all that as good as our counterparts overseas can, simply because they've automated it and we haven't. So we need to invest in the future, and we don't have that tendency here. That's why I mentioned earlier that we need to begin thinking about quality now, not service. Quality is important to America. Yes?
Say if someone was kind of unethical, like say you business student, and after he graduated, he had a tendency to submit a lot of lost items to your program. What kind of, how would you handle the situation like that?
See, can I have your name first, and I'll watch for you when we go through this. Yes, it does happen. We build in the fraud factor, but I believe inherently that people are generally honest. There's very few people that take advantage of the program. We have our ways of finding out. If that student had, say, making $50 charges a month and all of a sudden goes on a spending binge and spends $1,000, mysteriously then loses $1,000 worth of goods, then we'll normally investigate that. If you have a second claim, we will very certainly investigate that. So it doesn't really run away from us. So what we watch out more for than anything are fraud rings. And we've got a few hard fraud rings and a few other things that try and take advantage of the program. Keep in mind, we cover losses up to $50,000. We had one individual in New York who went into a store and bought $49,000 worth of gold and Rolex watches and was robbed right outside the store. Had a lot of witnesses. There was a policeman right there, so we know it wasn't fraudulent. We cut him a check for $49,000. Now, we did check his background. He does buy a lot of jewelry. He had put, I don't do this, but he did. He puts $50,000 to $60,000 a month on his American Express card. I'd like to have a job that would pay those payments every month. So, now we have a little prize going on here. It's very difficult to explain what we do in one sentence. We're trying to do a company brochure right now, so if you feel you know what we do, and you can explain it in one sentence that isn't a run-on sentence. By the way, we had someone attempt in the last one, and I think he spoke continuously for 5 minutes without breaking a sentence. But if you can think of something, we will accept your letters and comments, send you something back, and the winner will receive even a greater premium. But that's why I put my address and name up there. Again, where we were 5 or 6 years ago is nothing compared to where we are now. We're really on the cutting edge, and there are a lot of companies that are coming our way, and we don't have to do a lot of solicitation. We're a growing company. We're international. We're involved in all aspects of all businesses, and it's really a lot of fun. I really, really enjoy the work I do. Okay, well, thank you very much.